Okay, and testing, testing, testing. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to day 14 of the XXXTentacion trial. I'm a little bit concerned here, not gonna lie, because Law and Crime and Court TV have uploaded neither of the trials we're supposed to be here looking at. Um, so that's just slightly concerning. Um, yeah. I'm really hoping this doesn't turn into an extra murder trial. Um, because that's not really what any of us are here for. But I mean, after everything that happened on Friday with them cutting half the trial on the day, I'm really hoping that the court isn't continuing with whatever shenanigans that they were doing. So, what we will do is a recap of the judge refusing to drag rape. What? Wow, just realized what I said too. Um, for the court refusing to drag Drake into all of this. Um, my brain is not working. Um, and the arguments. I swear to God, if hang on, I swear to God, if they actually put it out, I'm gonna lose my shit. Um, Court TV still got the trial trending. In the meantime, yes, I'm gonna bring up the. All right. Well, I'm gonna bring up murder. Everyone's probably sick and tired of it, but need something on in the background while I work out exactly what the hell is going on. So, so Aussie Overlord, we spared every expense. Thank you so much for that, Stingy. Uh, shit, screen for TV. All right.
To her earring that was found there. And again, that's from the energy would push the earring up. It comes, the bullet comes down, goes through the breast and out.
So that shot blew her earlobe off or blew,
Pretty much, yes.
and the ring goes, they find at the scene, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's
All right.
walk
Listen until I can work out what the hell is going on.
the photos, and if you'll stay right where you are, and then I'm going to maybe have you draw something up there. I haven't quite decided yet. Could I have Defendant's Exhibit 169, please? And I remind everyone.
I'm just gonna get really annoyed though because I generally can't access the. I'm aware. Oh, actually, I suppose I can play the.
Nope. I'm sorry. 159. Not your fault.
Yeah, share this one instead. Yeah. God's sakes. Okay. That one. Audio booster. Sorry, guys. 1 second. And then I can present and share that screen instead. I'll turn my mic down so you guys can turn up that audio as usual. Alright. Now, while that's going through, in the meantime, I'm going to try and work out exactly what the hell is going on. Uh, so, time.
cite to Hoskins versus Wainwright. It is a federal case out of the Fifth Circuit from 1971 at 440 Fed Second 69. And I'm quoting in pertinent part, the right of compulsory process is not absolute, and the state may require that a defendant requesting such process establish some colorable need for the person to be summoned, lest the right be abused by those who would make frivolous requests. And it also cites back to Washington versus Texas, a 1967 case decided by the United States Supreme Court at 388 U.S. 14 or 87 Supreme Court 1920, which again discusses that there is certainly a right to compulsory process and a right to call witnesses for your defense, and this is basic to our system of justice, but it's not unfettered, and there comes a point where it can become abusive. Ashley versus Wainwright are cases out of the state of Florida. Got kind of a history. There's Ashley versus State at 433 Southern 2nd, 1263, a first DCA case from 1983. It was further then appealed, Ashley versus State 479 Southern 2nd, 837 in 1985, same case, and ultimately made it into the federal system under Ashley versus Wainwright, 639 Federal 2nd, 258. And again, in that case, they, quoting what the court's already expressed, the right to compulsory process is not absolute. And the person making the request can be required to establish a callable need for the person to be summoned, lest the right be abused by those who would make frivolous requests.
Watch the Live Law Crime Network.
Goes back to the Washington versus Texas case, where in that case, the U.S. Supreme Court.
See, I wish that one was on. No, I'm still here. Apparently, they've got another trial on Psychic on trial for spousal swindling case. But that one's not on YouTube. That one's just on Law and Crime. Which is annoying because that might have been an interesting thing to break things up as well. But I'm clearly not going to be able to take it directly off Law and Crime's website because surely that's got to be breaking their terms of service.
Tweet made by or Instagram post or some other post made by another person, not by a person, not Mr. Grant. And later
this might actually be a false start, guys. Is anyone able to access the court website? Unfortunately, being out of the country, I generally have issues accessing it.
or Instagram or whatever saying that I didn't post that. That was a hack. Okay? So those are the only two things that we have up there. And if that's all you have, then this is
Will I be streaming the Voir in the Wisconsin case? If I get the opportunity to. If there's at the moment, I don't have access to either of the streams. The only thing that's actually up at the moment is the Murder case, which I really am not going to waste everybody's time by being here and covering it again.
colorable, legitimate defense and just turning into harassment on it's like a Chewbacca defense.
Except, Judge, that I've already put in writing when the court ordered me to do so, the nexus between my witnesses in this case, that Antonio King, 600 Breezy, did in fact fly to South Florida and did in fact post video of himself threatening to be armed and threatening the decedent prior to his death. He further, I know, but I'm letting
Counsel, then subpoena 600 Breezy, what does that have to do with someone else?
I'll tell you.
Who have no evidence of being involved other than hearsay and innuendo. You are now trying to just drag somebody in who's a celebrity who does not want to be associated with this, and the harm to that individual is not inconsequential.
I'll tell you why. Because that person, Antonio King, then further posted that the reason that he came down here was for Drake. So I'm not making this up. This is out there. But I'm not being allowed to investigate it. All I want to do is take his deposition.
You've had this case since 2018. Go talk to Breezy.
He's on my witness list. I don't know where he is, but Judge, listen. Look.
But that's a different hearing. The hearing here is whether or not there are sufficient grounds for this court to order somebody who I have no evidence, and counsel's questions saying, "Are you aware of?" is not evidence. We're all aware that your questions are not evidence. So the detective who investigated the case said he finds no nexus. The relative of the deceased who came in to identify the body said, "Yeah, I'm not aware of any beef." And when you showed the screenshot of that, said,
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on. There's no
filed that as
nothing.
being hacked. Was he hacked that time? I don't know. His account's been hacked a number of times. This is beyond what would be considered something that can be authenticated. This is beyond triple hearsay. This is just gossip, rumor, and innuendo, and really doesn't have any place in a court of law.
In any other scenario, if it were not Aubrey Drake Graham, and it were anybody else, and it comes out that before he died, he said, "If I die, it's so-and-so," I get to ask you at least, Mr. Graham, do you know?
Well, I mean, I wasn't planning on Barone, but I mean, aside from doing the reviews,
have you
but
ever communicated with them? These are questions that are normal in any scenario. However,
yeah, I have no idea what the hell's going on, honestly.
The decedent was a rap star, and the person I want to depose is a rap star. It's the Home Depot, like I said, if a decedent worked at Home Depot, I'm probably going to have some people from Home Depot on my witness list. This is no different. The issue is that the people at Home Depot can't hire Brad Cohen. And Brad Cohen came in here, and all of a sudden now I'm not even able to exercise my client's right to investigate this case. All I wanted to do was to take his deposition. There's been more than enough.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you probably should have
and frankly, Judge,
exercised your client's rights long before this.
Because everybody, 50% of the population knew about the issues between Drake and X. Everybody knew it. I believe that she lied on the stand, which is really raises an eyebrow on why that person's going to perjure herself for that question. So, Judge,
Your opinion, counsel, is not facts before the court. It's not the testimony before the court. Again, I'm mindful of your client's right to present a defense, and I have gone as far as I think I can to allow him his opportunity for process. But at this point, it appears to me nothing more than harassment of someone in order to set up some sort of straw man, look over here where there's no evidence of that. In fact, even you're suggesting that if your questions are, do you know my client? Have you talked to any of these people? That does not absolve them of the charges before them. That's not a defense. At best, that would be adding a unindicted co-conspirator, if you will. But that's not a defense to the individuals that are here. And
Judge, that was just a sample of a question that could lead to another question. It's a question that should be asked of someone. And if it weren't Graham, I will be asking. I will be able to be asking.
No, it wouldn't. Because if it were a guy at Home Depot who came in and said, "Judge, I don't know why I'm being dragged in here. I have nothing to do with this. I don't know these individuals. I didn't kill anyone. I don't know anything what you're talking about."
What you talking about, Willis?
Entitled to the same relief. It does not matter. And additionally, just so your motion's granted.
Thank you.
Your motion's denied.
Okay. Well, and there's cheeseburger again. All right. What we'll do in the meantime is pull up the defense opening statements. We didn't. We only got through a certain level of the prosecution's opening statements for the Anderson case from 2022. At least that has significantly better audio than the prosecution. So us something to work with. And that's about an hour's worth at least. And then that should give us sufficient time to work out what the fuck is going on. Pull it across there, add the other volume booster. On, share that tab instead. Oh, and I can take off the other thing, which is great. Alright. Audio up. Alright. So this is the opening statements from the defense team from the trial that turned into a mistrial. Hungry for a cheeseburger now, it's not even 8 AM. Sorry about that. Yeah. The only thing on court TV is also the murder trial. So yeah. It's almost impossible to escape at this point.
It told you that it'll be up to you to piece together the evidence. But you cannot piece together evidence that does not exist. The evidence in this case will show you that nobody knows what actually happened on May 17th, 2020. Nobody knows who specifically went into Mr. Gutierrez's apartment. Nobody knows how Mr. Gutierrez was murdered. Nobody knows when exactly Mr. Gutierrez was murdered. Nobody knows
I wonder if there's
where
another
Mr.
extension of the
Gutierrez's
leisure to at least
body
clean up the audio,
is.
because that's terrible.
In fact, the evidence will show that nobody knows if Mr. Gutierrez was even murdered. The facts and the evidence in this case will show you that Mr. Anderson did not kill Mr. Gutierrez. The state talked to you at length about the relationship between Sadie Beecham and Mr. Anderson. And the state talked about the evidence that it believes will show that it was a relationship that ended and Zach was jealous and that he would basically wanted to get back with her, was trying to. The evidence presented throughout this trial will give you a little bit of a different picture than that. There were multiple text messages that the state referred to about Mr. Anderson expressing jealousy or Mr. Anderson wanting to do something. The fact of the matter is that you'll hear testimony that Miss Beecham and Mr. Anderson were in a 12-year relationship, that they were on and off again quite frequently, and that during that 12-year relationship, they had 3 children. You heard from the state about Olivia Anderson. They also have 2 twin boys together. You'll hear from evidence that you don't just stop loving someone after 12 years, that there's always going to be feelings for that person. But that's kind of human nature. And that after they officially split in January of 2019, it wasn't as the state told you. The evidence won't show you that after that, there was no attempt to rekindle a relationship. There were multiple attempts. And they were attempts not by my client, Mr. Anderson, but by Miss Beecham herself.
Really hoping that the
state
audio
talked
in the
at
new
length
trial
about
is
some of the
better than
text
this.
that it believes shows or will show the evidence that Mr. Anderson was the one attempting to rekindle a relationship. But on March 24th, 2020, Miss Beecham received a text from Zach that said, and you'll hear.
Objection to statements from the defendant.
I'd have to see the particular instrument to which you refer. Give me the whole thing.
Judge, it's from the Cellbrite report download that is going.
But the question is whether it's an assertion or not. That will be determinative.
I can come over and if we want to do,
You know what? I'm gonna ask you folks to step into the library for just a second. This won't take, but a minute or two. And,
No, I'm gonna suggest that, about this.
It's very true, Nissa. I do think we will.
I'm gonna suggest that, after they are used up, the council and I may be able to work this out, but it may take.
after they're excused, but
After the jury is excused, we may be able to work this out without having the court, come between, but.
well, either way, they've got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Unless you guys step out the hallway.
Well, it may take longer than that, so I apologize.
Why don't you go in the reading room, please? And is it a mess in there? All right. Well, it's pretty good. Cup fans spare my brewer stuff. We'll talk about the case, please. This Julian Eden he's already in a commitment, isn't he? This is a more likely not to become competent. I'm just trying to see if this is a review or an original. I think he's probably an in and out. That's probably what it is. Okay. Okay, so we'll need a. It doesn't sound like it's just an update. So this is not an update. Okay, yeah.
That didn't help either. Second.
This is Seaberg is in bad shape. Guy in bad shape. Declining rapidly. Baker. One of the witnesses.
It's interesting that all this happened during the defense's opening statements as well. Generally, you're not going to see this sort of shit. Have there been any orders? Wait, what's this? I just heard my phone vibrate, but I have no idea where my phone is. Of course, oh, it's going to make it way too easy.
Let's have this discussion. You guys can work it out, and I'll just decide. So, what is the statement? What is the source of the statement? Is a text message? Did you say?
No, it's not in my pocket. I'm not sitting on it. It definitely vibrated on my
The
desk.
source of the text message
I have
is
no idea where I'm.
Miss Sadie Beecham's Cellbrite download. It's a text to Sadie Beecham from Mr. Anderson.
Okay.
And I'm looking
What does
at,
it say?
sure, it reads, "You got other dudes and I am supposed to find someone who wants to spend time with me." I'm not
That doesn't
offering.
sound like an assertion.
Mental witness.
You're objecting on hearsay.
The undersigned attorney.
Hearsay
Got a
is an
rule.
assertion
Criminal
offered to prove
procedure.
the truth of the matter asserted. What's the assertion?
I'm talking about the prohibition of.
Interesting. Okay, so Thursday they added one of the members from the sheriff's office
Well, that's
to
the state
the
against Johnson, and that is the rule. But it's not
Boatwright
a rule
trial
against
anyway.
admitting the statement of a party opponent or a non-testifying defendant or anybody. It's a rule, it's a hearsay rule, that the statements of the defendant serving his own interest
Yeah,
are
not so much vices.
inadmissible
I'm in
by,
hell right now. The triple X case is gone, and it doesn't look like they're streaming the
where's that in
jury
the rules?
selection.
The statute says that the defense may not offer a statement of the party opponent. This is a statement.
Read me the
If I
statute.
can,
I've
Judge,
heard that.
sorry, if I can, that party opponent is an exception to the hearsay rule.
Exclusion from the hearsay.
Correct.
Right, sir.
But that, all right, you read me the rule you're relying.
Oh, there it is. Thank God for that. Okay. Oh, what the hell is that? I made chocolate banana ice cream last night, and the ice cream maker is amazing. I'll bet. That sounds amazing.
If I'm correct about the rule you're relying on, it's the exclusion from the hearsay rule about statements of a party opponent.
90801 judge definition.
Yeah, and it's excluded from the definition of hearsay. But that means that that's not the applicable rule here. You're referring to the decision of the Supreme Court in State against Johnson.
Yes.
And that says that the defendant's self-serving statements are hearsay unless he's testifying.
Yes, that is what I'm asserting.
That's exactly. But the reason I don't agree with your objection is that these don't sound like assertions of fact, and the definition of hearsay is an assertion.
Son of a bitch! I think they
which
put
is
out.
being made in order to support, in order to prove the truth of that which is asserted.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, I interrupted.
That's all right.
Okay, so the asserter of it is
Hang on, what happened there? No, it's supposed to be going. Okay, I'm just gonna let that run for a second.
that the
Cameraman's on meth.
is making the argument that in fact this is a mutual back and forth about whether they are going to get back together. So they are making an assertion, and they are using the statement of a part of their own person without testimony as the basis to do that. So if he were to testify, certainly they could say, and did you say this? I mean, obviously that's that's unchallenged.
actually, that's invoking, that's asking for the hearsay. Did you say this? That's asking him to affirm the hearsay. But it becomes testimonial at that point. But the point is, read the statement again.
Sure, Judge. You got other dudes, and I am supposed to find someone who wants to spend time with me.
And that sounds, even if it were under the hearsay rule, it sounds like a plan or purpose. And I'm supposed to, what am I supposed to do? As opposed to being an assertion of fact, the other thing that he says is, you've got other dudes. Now, if that's being offered by the defense to prove that she has other male companions, then it would be hearsay. But I don't hear it being offered for that purpose. And apparently, that's conceded by your opening statement. So I don't see it as hearsay. So, unless you have something else.
Well, I do think it asserts a fact that is in dispute here.
Which is what?
Which is, what counsel just argued is that this statement is an example that she wishes to read to the jury, that in fact, rather than Sadie Beecham being pursued by an individual she is trying to get to stop pursuing her, that there is an alternative narrative in these statements that disputes Sadie Beecham in that scenario.
Well, that doesn't make it hearsay or non-hearsay. The purpose for which it's, well, I don't want to say it that way. I don't agree with you.
Okay.
All right, ask the jury to come back up, please. Okay.
Brain Free Zone, there is a chance that the trial is over. I'm currently looking into it.
Thank you. So as I was saying, on March 24th, 2020, Ms. Beecham receives a text from Mr. Anderson that says, you got other dudes, and I am supposed to find someone who wants to spend time with me. The state says that the evidence will show that she's not trying to spark up the relationship again. But there's instances, and you'll hear the testimony, that Ms. Beecham continuously refers to Mr. Anderson as Babe. His nicknames on March 28th, 2020. She texts Mr. Anderson and says, good night, A-Bear. She continuously, from January 2019 all the way up to May 17th, 2020, says things like this. There were also instances where she expressed to Mr. Anderson that she wanted to give it another go with Mr. Anderson. On March 30th, 2020, Ms. Beecham texted Mr. Anderson and said, and you'll hear this when she testifies, I want to give us a chance, but I feel like I'm just gonna lose the fight. Doesn't sound like someone who is trying to avoid a relationship. You'll also hear evidence that in between January of 2019 and May 2017, Ms. Beecham would invite Mr. Anderson over for dinner, overnights. You'll hear text evidence throughout the trial that one day she woke up and was surprised that he had left. so early in the morning, indicating that he had spent the overnight at her house. And there were times in late April, 4/23/2020, where Miss Beecham texted Mr. Anderson and said, "Picking up Panda Express. If you want to come over for a little bit, let me know." The evidence will show you that this isn't a situation where Mr.
Okay, people, just so that we're aware, I'm going to show you exactly what the hell I am looking at. Um, so each of the three, actually, hang on, let me just bring up the last one as well so that I get that right. Find the case there so that I've got the third one as well. Oh, bloody reCAPTCHA. I hate that. Traffic lights, traffic lights, traffic lights, verify, and search. So, looks like that kerfuffle on Friday may have been an issue. Because this is what the court dockets look like for each of the three. If you have a look, the last thing that happened on Friday is that the case has been deleted from the court docket. So this is one of the three on the XXX trial. Same thing. On Friday, deleted from the docket. And the last one, Boatwright, deleted from the docket. So, what I'm thinking happened is more than likely Colonel Mustard did something, and there's been a mistrial. So that was a week. That was a fortnight wasted. um, and annoyingly now, that leaves me with next to nothing to cover aside from the murder trial. Um, which I'm really annoyed about. I'm not going to lie, because if that's happened, more likely than not, Colonel Mustard did something. In my opinion, I'm in no way defaming you, Colonel Mustard. Um, to cause the cases to get severed. In which case, their chances of getting off scot-free increase dramatically because they'll be able to point the finger at each other and create reasonable doubt. What happened to the eye drop trial? It got postponed as well. There's supposed to be a hearing today, actually. Sorry, today my time or today your time? Is it today my time? Today your time? No, tomorrow your time. To determine when that's going to be heard again. So, I'm going to keep an eye out. I'm going to put this. I'm going to put the defense's opening statements for the 2022 case back on. But if nothing changes, look, is it possible that they pled guilty? I'd be really freaking surprised, honestly, Brian. I'd be really surprised if they pled guilty. Um, for the most part, because it wouldn't have been deleted from the docket. In fact, no. Personally, I can almost specifically say that they didn't plead guilty. Because there would be an entry here saying that they'd changed their plea. Because they have, where is it? Pending motions, file exhibit list. Should be here somewhere. Should be on the court calendar for the pleas. Because for the most part, the warrant, demand, arrest paperwork, arraignment. There you go. Written defense, plea of not guilty. Yeah. So if the if something had happened and they'd pled, it'd be in here that they had changed their plea to guilty, whereas this is just deleted from the docket. So Oh, can watch those Las Vegas videos, people getting arrested acting nutty in the meantime. That's not a bad idea. I mean, we've also got volume 3 of the crazy meth head that got arrested in on Zoom court. We've also got property court, which is running. Thank God for that. Um, Colonel Mustard did it in a sidebar with a tort. That's actually really clever. Well done, Tits and Reagan. Also, why would they suddenly just plead guilty? It's a good point. Who is Colonel Mustard? Colonel Mustard is the short guy that had an attitude problem that we just watched arguing about Drake. Knew I heard Colonel Mustard for a reason. Yeah. Yes, brain free zone. There will more than likely, if what happened it happened the way that I think it is, they're going to be pushing to have separate individual trials. So not only will you get one resolution, you will get 3 resolutions at some point, probably next year, depending on how quickly the court will reset the trial date. You had mountain oysters for breakfast. I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, look, the annoying thing is that I'm gonna have to keep an eye on it because I mean theoretically there'll be news about it later on today, but there's nothing in it so far. 'Cause, I mean, it's only just gone what 9:30 in the morning. Will we work for nothing? Yeah, seems it. I'm starting to hate trial streams. I'm not gonna lie. Did the stalking with kid get delayed? It doesn't look like they're streaming the jury selection, and from the looks of it, the Triple X trial just got a mistrial. So, yeah. All he had to do was not introduce Drake and say that the cops had tunnel vision. Yeah, pretty much. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to put these defense statements back on. We're going to look at what we can fill in some time with. But if that's the case, guys, all due respect, I'm going to go back to bed because it's like 3 in the morning. And if I don't need to specifically be here, although I love entertaining you guys, if there's no live trial that we're actually enjoying watching, then yeah. The trial gods really fucking hate you. Yeah.
Mr. Anderson is trying to interject his life, interject himself.
Guessing we don't have the relevant footage? No. So for anyone that missed it on Friday, the last like 4 hours of the trial were not put on stream, which I assume is exactly when all this went down. And we're not going to know. So.
Into Miss Beecham's life. That it's a situation, the evidence will show you this, that it's a couple who were together for 12 years that were still on and off again during the entirety from January 2019 to May 17th, 2020. So this concept that the state introduced to you that Mr. Anderson is jealous.
Mr. Anderson. Oh, I'm so going to have to load up.
The evidence will also show you that perhaps this jealousy
Matrix
is
quotes.
manufactured, and that it's manufactured by Miss Beecham. That you have someone who you were with for 12 years that keeps giving you these glimpses of hope, asking you to come over, telling them that they love you, telling them to spend the night. And so that context, the evidence that you'll hear about the context of their relationship, provides a little bit more context as to some of the things that Mr. Anderson admitted that he did. And you heard the state. Mr. Anderson admitted he went to Sadie's house on April 24th, or late night April 24th, early morning April 25th. He wasn't trying to hide that from anyone. He admitted he sent her a text. He admitted that,
hey, if you got it, send it.
This is someone that I was in a relationship with for 12 years. And no, it's not as cut and dry as saying, she didn't want anything to do with me, I wanted everything to do with her. And so when we look at that context, the context of the relationship, it's this manufactured jealousy of saying, I'm leading someone on and they're getting mad or upset or hurt because I'm also still seeing other people. The state also told you that the evidence will establish that the reason or motive that Mr. Anderson would have to murder Mr. Gutierrez was because he was so jealous
Yeah, I'd be hoping for some
of
severe
this
sanctions, honestly.
relationship between Mr. Gutierrez and Mrs. Beecham. That was a threat to him and her getting together. But in order for an individual to be threatened by a serious relationship has to exist. And the evidence will show you that that simply is not the case between Miss Beecham and Mr. Gutierrez. You'll hear testimony from Miss Beecham herself that she met Mr. Gutierrez on Facebook dating. And that was approximately 3 months prior to May 17th, 2020. And that they spoke quite often, but they were only able to see each other ever so often on the weekends because there was childcare duties on either side. You'll also hear testimony that Miss Beecham was not the only person that Mr. Gutierrez was talking to. There were multiple other women that he was actively seeing at this time. In fact, you heard from the state that on May 17th, 2020, Miss Macias, who you'll hear, Meridia Macias, and you'll hear her tell you that she was talking to Mr. Gutierrez, and Mr. Gutierrez invited her over to come over to his house on May 17th, 2020. So it's not as if the evidence will show you
Yeah, what I'm
that
gonna do, guys,
Mr.
is I'm gonna
Gutierrez
actually
stopped
go back
talking
through
to other
the
women
history of
maybe
the
in March or April
like
and was
trials that
just
have been
solely
done by Law
dedicated on
Enforcement Court
Sadie.
TV,
The evidence is
like
going to show you that
pre Johnny
up
Depp, and
until
see if
May
there's anything interesting
17th,
as a backup, just in case.
2020, he was actively seeing other women. You'll also hear from a Kim Lavora, who will tell you that on May 17th, 2020, the same day that Mr. Gutierrez was texting and asking Ms. Macias to come over, that at around 8:30 p.m., Kim Lavora had a 45-minute conversation with Mr. Gutierrez on the phone. And that although she had never met Mr. Gutierrez in person, it was a romantic, flirty type of relationship that they had through correspondence. You'll also hear from several witnesses, friends and loved ones of Mr. Gutierrez, that he never introduced Sadie to any of his friends. None of his friends ever met Miss Beecham. Miss Beecham didn't have the contact number for any single one of his friends. Nothing. The evidence will show you that.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna cover the trial
So
of
this
George
narrative
Floyd. That
by
is
the
gonna,
state about
yeah,
what
no.
this evidence is
Moving
going to
on.
show you, that Mr. Anderson is so jealous because he needs to be with Sadie, because he's trying to get back with her, and because he's threatened by this relationship. The evidence doesn't support that.
For anyone that has just dropped in, Fire Ants in her yoga pants. Hello, I love that name. These are the opening statements from the 2022 Defense Counsel for Zachariah Anderson that had a mistrial. So, yeah, I'm aware my audio was low because I put it down so that we were dealing with it for when I was dealing with the Triple X case. So, Skylar Felix, hello. Yeah. Yeah, no, I kind of figured that was a case that I'm not going to touch. But I'm going back and having a look through, see what other things are in the playlist. But yeah. I'm not going to lie, this is massively disappointing. Because I too definitely wanted to see an ending, and I was sure that the jury was going to convict the three of them. And now, if it's going to pan out the way that I think it's going to pan out, each of the three of those guys is more than likely going to walk. But anyway.
The state talked a little bit about the timeline in this case, and it is kind of all over the place. A lot has happened because we're not just looking at one day, right? We're looking at months because we're talking about a relationship that was 12 years long. We're looking at a lot of dynamics. And so throughout the trial, I just pay attention to every little thing will be coming pretty quickly and it's all interchangeable. And I apologize if I repeat myself on some things I'm speaking to this afternoon, but there is a lot of overlap in this case. But the timeline,
Yeah, probably.
it's
He
important.
wigged out because he couldn't get
And the reason that
Drake
it's
in the case.
important is because
So he
the
just
evidence of the
did whatever he could and
timeline
threw his.
will show you that Mr. Anderson did not have anything to do with the disappearance of Mr. Gutierrez. May 17th, 2020. We'll hear from Christy Ortiz,
Look, they probably
who
do
is the
T-ring,
mother of Mr.
but given that he's going to get
Gutierrez's
a
son.
completely new trial in front of a
And
completely
she'll
new
tell you
jury,
that she remembers Mr.
and he'll be able to point his
Gutierrez
fingers
arriving at
at
her
the
home
other
at
three
around
that were in the car,
7:53 p.m.
as well as impeach
And she remembered it was
Cheeseburger.
7:53 p.m. because
I
she was on
personally
the
feel
phone
that
with
there's
her
going to be
mom,
reasonable doubt.
and her son walked in, and she looked at her phone and saw that the phone call had only lasted about 2 minutes. So when she talked with the officer, she said, "That's how I knew."
Okay, this one sounds promising. From February 2021, so a couple of years ago, the trial of James Prokopovich. In April 2023, supposedly killed his wife, charged with first-degree intentional homicide, domestic abuse, obstructing an officer, and perjury before the court. Prosecutors had the murder case without a body. Victoria Propovich went missing back in April 2023. At the time, the Brown County Sheriff's Office stated that she lived with depression and could hurt herself. Investigators changed that stance 6 years later. It was the husband who ended up reported her missing, said she had depression, according to the complaint obtained by W. Bay. Though he claimed to have looked for her the day she disappeared, the defendant allegedly went to work the next day and didn't tell his co-worker she was missing, nor did he act differently. Authorities say his friends and family participated in the search, but participated in the search, but he didn't, even becoming hostile at times, insisting that she was dead, saying that they were wasting their time. Ultimately, he religiously tripped himself up by lying about his actions for years, even committing perjury in a 2019 hearing. Said, however, that he did not kill his wife and that he was trying to protect his newly kindled relationship with a former girlfriend. No, no, Obama, this is a one that's already been through. So this was in 2021 that the trial was heard. I'm actually more interested in a historical trial now because at least I know that that one has finished. Which means we'd be able to fast forward through a whole heap of stuff as well. This is all just as a backup, just in case. Um, that one sounds interesting. I don't know if anyone covered that at any point. So, what's the audio sound like? Okay, audio could be worse. Wait, what? One of the Marilyn Manson accusers recanted? Said her ex pressured her to lie? Jesus. That's a good point. Jeff covers OJ. We know that won't be postponed on us. This is true. Can watch the opening statements at least. Yeah, sure. I mean, all right. Let's do that because the opening statements for this one are pretty quick. You've got 20 minutes on one, 13 minutes on the other. So the opening statements were fairly short. So I should exclude daughters from a sequestration order. Interesting. All right. Well, hang on. Where's YouTube. Where's the YouTube? That I'll put in. I'll put up a poll. Or what are we going to call this? Prokopowicz. And I shall. Alright. There you go.
It was 7:53 because it was a very short phone call. Then you'll hear from Kayla Petty, who is the mother of Mr.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Gutierrez's
We knew
daughter.
that he
She
was
lives
leaving
in
Drake
Twin
out of it
Lakes,
because
and
we
you'll hear
watched 20
testimony
minutes
that
of
Twin
the
Lakes
judge going off
from
his going off earlier.
Christy Ortiz's house is about 42 minutes. So if he left at around 7:53, and going back to Christy Ortiz's testimony, she will tell you that she didn't see Mr. Gutierrez. He didn't come in, just that her son came in. But that if he would have left at around 7:53, 42 minutes. But then you'll hear from, as I just said, you'll hear from Kayla Petty, who
It'd be fairly
David's
quick
mom,
to
who
do
lives
this
in
trial
Twin
too.
Lakes,
It's
that
broken up into segments as well,
was,
and it looks like
he
we're kind
arrived
of
there at
already cutting out a whole
8:20
heap of the crap.
p.m. And she remembered that being weird
Because
because
the
he was
date
supposed to be
um,
there at 8:40.
by witness and by
And that he did come inside, and
whatever.
he
So
took around
many
for
hours we got
about
there.
5 minutes, and she was able to see what he was wearing.
1,
He was wearing a
2,
Chicago
4,
Cubs hat. He had his glasses on.
and
He was wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants.
probably only a few
She
days worth
thought
of
maybe
testimony
he
there,
was
honestly.
wearing sneakers, but couldn't be for sure. But
That
anyway,
lab
he
case was
sticks
horrible as
around
well.
5 minutes, which would mean he left at 8:25. Now, the state
All right, so we got 18 votes with
told you
72% of the
earlier
votes
that
saying to look at the
the
news
evidence
stuff.
will show you that he arrived, he went from,
Also, how's the court audio in that? Like, because I mean, I can't tell if it's my audio driver or if it's just. Oh, actually, what am I doing? I can just play a different video that actually has half decent audio. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Oh yeah, no, that sounds fine. Okay, so it's definitely that court trial. Okay. All right. Well, let's do this, and we'll have a look at the opening statements. Do I need to boost the audio on this? Maybe. We'll see how we go with this. This court audio isn't too bad, so if there's any issues, let me know, and we can play around with it a bit. Put the branding back up. Lauren Crum get nicked.
Tons, are you all set?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. $2,854 days. That is the last day that Victoria Prokopowicz was seen alive. She was last seen in her home on Kunish Road over in the town of Pittsfield. The last person to see her husband, James Prokopowicz, the defendant. Her disappearance, ultimately what investigators uncover over the period of their 8-year investigation, is what leads us here today. You'll hear a lot during trial about Vicky, who she was. She was a 59-year-old woman, mother of 3 children, 2 daughters, Marcia and Stacy, a son, Wes or Wesley. She had several grandchildren. She was born, raised in the Brown County area her entire life, left the state on just a few occasions. She had various jobs. She worked as a secretary, a waitress, in a nursing home, in the deli at Super Ron's Market in Pulaski. She cared for pets, enjoyed baking, making crafts. Ultimately, she married the defendant, Mr. Prokopovits, in 1989, and they were married for 24 years, until Vicky disappeared 7 years and 10 months ago. This case, why we are all here today and in the next several weeks, is a search for the truth of what happened to Vicky on April 25th, 2013. Again, myself, Attorney Lemkuhl, we represent the state of Wisconsin. This isn't a civil case where we represent Vicky or her family. We represent the people of this state and the people of this community. We work with law enforcement. You'll see seated at council table, Special Agent Jay Yergis from DCI, Sergeant Roman Ehrenstein from the Brown County Sheriff's Office. They were the 2 main case agents throughout this case who worked this investigation for the past 8 years. You'll hear during the course of testimony and evidence about the day Vicky disappeared on April 25th, 2013. Jim and Vicky, they went to a doctor's appointment earlier that day, about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon. Vicky that day was reported to be in good spirits, dressed nicely. This was noted both by her son, Wes, and the defendant. When they got home later that day, they had supper with Wes. Ultimately, a little bit later, about 6 or 7 o'clock, Wes leaves the house, goes to some friends for the night. About 4 a.m. is when he returns to the house, the following day, April 26th. You'll hear evidence and testimony that the last person to see Vicky alive is the defendant. Wes gets home about 4 a.m. He's coming from the city, coming from Green Bay, driving west down Coonish Road. As he's pulling in, getting home, he sees another vehicle coming from the opposite direction, more from Pulaski, from 32. And it's the defendant, about a little after 4 a.m. And you'll hear Wes, when he testifies, this was odd. It was a little bit earlier than he would typically
I love that the
be up
judge
to go
has
to work.
his like placard
You'll hear evidence and testimony
in wood.
that when Wes gets home, immediately the defendant is telling him his mom is gone. Gone. Not missing or not here, that she's gone. The defendant then immediately gets back into his car, drives off. He says to go look again for Vicky, despite just arriving back home. You'll hear he goes to work. The defendant goes to work as usual. He works for a company called McKeefrey's. You'll hear that a lot. They had a contract with Georgia Pacific, the plant right over on Broadway here, downtown Green Bay. Clocks in at 5:30 that morning. Again, goes to work as usual. He has contact with several coworkers throughout the course of the day, people he worked with for several years. You'll hear from those coworkers evidence and testimony. He's not telling them, the defendant's not telling them that his wife of 24 years is missing that morning, that she wasn't home. You'll hear from the coworkers that some found out days later through other people He also does not report it to law enforcement that morning. Not until he returns home after work. About 1 o'clock that day on the 26th, he calls law enforcement, reports Vicky missing. Full 10 hours after first arriving home. You'll hear evidence and testimony that officers responded that day and began, at that point, what was a missing persons investigation, not a homicide investigation. Officers immediately begin searching the area. Jim had told investigators Vicky was wearing a stacked heel shoe that morning. That was a shoe that was missing from the home. You'll hear Vicky was not walking long distances at this point due to some physical issues that she had. It's dark at night. So many of the things that are important to Vicky, tangible items, her purse, cigarettes, her cane, dentures, driver's license, phone, all left at the house. She didn't drive, she didn't have her own car. Again, was not walking long distances. So investigators look in the immediate area of the residence.
Just gonna have it stop there quickly, just to see, because I've tried installing a new audio thing. So I just want to refresh the page so we're at 7 minutes 20.
Tangible.
See whether or not that. Yeah, no, okay, it's just that guy. Never mind. Oh shit, wrong page.
Tangible items, her purse, cigarettes, her
Worth a shot.
cane, dentures, driver's license, phone, all left at the house. She didn't drive, she didn't have her own car. Again, was not walking long distances. So investigators look in the immediate area of the residence. And it's the town of Pittsfield. It's a rural area. The residence they lived in, an old farmhouse, so there's some outbuildings on the property, fields, open fields, creek that kind of goes by the residence. That same day, searchers, canines, and officers who arrive on scene search the area, do not find Vicky. Over the course of the next 8 years, you'll hear from numerous members of law enforcement, of Vicky's family, random citizens, other search organizations, search throughout this area for Vicky. They search the Mountain Bay Trail, which runs through the back of the property. Dozens of volunteers, people on horseback, searchers using canines and cadaver dogs, using sonar equipment to search nearby quarries. Drones are used to search the expansive fields in the area. Investigators also took other avenues to try to locate Vicky, some sign that she was elsewhere. You'll hear that phone records showed barely any contact with another person, very little contact. Again, no vehicle, no credit cards to her name, didn't have a lot of friends or neighbors that she was close with. Officers checked local hospitals, medical facilities, called local taxi cab companies to see if anyone was near the Coonish Road address. They search Interpol databases. They search contact with law enforcement in all 50 states. No contact with Vicky. No trace of her over the past 8 years. You'll also hear testimony and evidence that during these searches at the house, again, searches where random citizens were showing up to help find Vicky, you'll hear that the defendant did not assist in those searches. You'll hear he, in some occasions, sat in his recliner and was drinking beer. You'll hear that he continued to go to work as usual that day that he found out she was missing, and the days that followed, continued to go to work as usual. The family started noticing this, noticing the defendant's attitude during these searches, that he wouldn't assist, that he wouldn't come out and thank searchers for helping try to find his missing wife. The weekend you'll hear after she disappeared, that weekend, her, Vicky's daughter, Marcia, is reporting that Jim's telling her he's going to get a U-Haul to come and get this shit out of the house. That he didn't need a place that big just for him. In the weeks that followed, the numerous searches that were done at the residence, searchers are reporting overhearing comments like this. You will never find her. She's not there. You're wasting your time searching that area. The defendant's own daughter, who you'll hear from, Lisa Masty, told officers that the defendant would express anger, that more searches were being done to try to locate his missing wife. Again, at this point, it's a missing persons investigation. You'll hear a lot of evidence and testimony throughout the next several days about Vicky's physical and mental health. You'll hear she was diagnosed with colon cancer in the summer of 2012, had a colostomy bag, ultimately had a reversal of that procedure prior to her disappearance. But due to that, she would use a walker at times, would use a cane to get around, was not walking as usual. You will hear that Vicky had bouts of depression, that she consistently over the years saw.
This is in the middle of 2021. This is like 2 years
There
ago.
was not, and you won't hear, evidence of a long history of suicide attempts. You'll hear about 2 instances, none since 2003, 10 years before her disappearance. You'll hear from her psychiatrist who worked with her for several years, most recently in the summer of 2012, just a few months before she disappeared, that he didn't consider Vicky to be suicidal around the time she disappeared. Defendant himself telling investigators he believed that Vicky appeared to be in good spirits that day. As the investigation continues, you'll hear more about information that officers are gaining with respect to Jim and Vicky's relationship. Their relationship was not intimate, and at least a year before her disappearance.
No, we're watching this
You'll
one to
hear
determine
that
if it's going to be a half decent
the
backup
defendant
case,
controlled
just in
a
case.
lot of Vicky's life, controlled the medication, controlled the finances, controlled Vicky's access to her medication that she used for her depression. He would do the grocery shopping. He would drive Vicky places. Again, she doesn't have a car to get around. You'll hear from the psychiatrist
Wait,
that Vicky
what?
was seeing about what.
Hang on. Sorry, I was just trolling through New York Post to see what other cases may have been interesting. New York City dominatrix convicted in cheesecake poisoning case. That is not a sentence that I thought I would ever say. Hang on, let me fix my audio and repeat that. Hopefully that's not too loud. New York City dominatrix convicted in cheesecake poisoning case. I have to see if that was streamed. Anyway, back to this.
What she's telling him with respect to the relationship. How Jim was controlling and abusive, in her words. You'll hear from the defendant and various comments that he's making to law enforcement about the disappearance, as if Vicky was some sort of a burden. He's telling officers, quote, "If you would have lived with this damn woman for 20 some years, you know what I'm trying to tell you, what we went through." Said within months of Vicky's disappearance. You'll also hear evidence and testimony that within several weeks of Vicky's disappearance, defendant's asking his employer about removing her from his insurance that he has through his employment. ultimately doing so in September of 2013.
Good call.
You'll hear evidence and testimony then about a conversation that the defendant had with Vicky's children and the family, about a new relationship that he started with a person. You'll hear Kathy Friday, person he knew from years prior. Began calling Kathy within weeks. Vicky's disappearance in May of 13. Ultimately, a romantic relationship commences shortly thereafter. And you'll hear evidence and testimony about how the defendant and Kathy Friday, his girlfriend, are explaining this relationship. That it was a chance encounter in Wittenberg at a casino over in the middle part of the state. Happened upon each other. They were both dealing with, obviously, the defendant having a missing wife, and this relationship starts, and that is how this came to be. They tell this story, you'll hear, for years. They tell it to Sergeant Ehrenstein, they tell it to Special Agent Jurgis, to family members. Ultimately, they tell it under oath during a hearing relating to this investigation. You'll hear that officers spent a significant amount of time attempting to verify this version, as it was relevant to their investigation. They're trying to find what happened to Vicky. You'll hear evidence and testimony that Kathy and the defendant ultimately did testify in a hearing and maintained that this Wittenberg casino story is how they met. You'll hear Kathy admitting to getting a second phone so they could communicate without her family finding out about it. You'll hear that the defendant admitted to lying to police for years about how he met Kathy, how this relationship started, admitting that this casino story, them randomly coming into contact with each other, was a complete farce. You'll hear during the course of an interview with law enforcement, the defendant admitted to being involved in Vicky's disappearance. Quote, "Okay, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll admit I killed her. I killed her. There, I killed her." Before retracting that comment a few moments later. You'll also hear, however, the defendant spoke with other individuals while in custody regarding this case. You'll hear
televised.
what he was telling those inmates, that he was 100% sure that they would never find Vicky. Quote, "Where is she at? Is she missing?" The defendant replying, "No, she's dead." The other inmate asking, "Well, how do you know she's dead?" The defendant replying, "Oh, believe me, I know." The defendant commenting that there would be no blood or no teeth, that even if they did find her, they wouldn't be able to identify who it was. That is a summary of the evidence the state believes you'll hear over the next 2 weeks. For this, the defendant's charged with 4 offenses, which we read to you on Friday. First-degree intentional homicide, conspiracy to commit perjury, obstructing an officer. First-degree intentional homicide has 2 elements, just 2 elements. That the defendant caused the death of Vicky, that he intended to do so. Obstructing an officer, that he's misleading an investigation. Officers who are sworn law enforcement, giving them false information about this case. Counts 3 and 4, involving perjury. Again, testifying under oath about false information. Count 4 being the actual lying about it. Count 3, the conspiracy, means he worked with another person. He committed the crime with another person, and they did something to effectuate that purpose. So here, he's As the state alleges, and you'll hear, the defendant conspired with Kathy Friday, his girlfriend, to commit perjury, to lie about the circumstances in which they met. Again, they're telling you why. They're aware of how that looks when his wife is missing. You'll hear from a number of witnesses over the next 2 weeks. And as we told you on Friday, they all provide essentially a piece to this puzzle. Sometimes the parties need to call witnesses out of order, there's scheduling issues, so you may kind of at a certain point not totally understand how this fits in when a witness is testifying. But once the testimony is over, you'll have a clear picture of what happened here. What happened on April 25th, 2013. You were just read a lot of law, and it's important to follow that. But really, at the end of the day, your job as a juror is to search for the truth. The truth of what happened to Vicky Prokopovits on April 25th, 2013. The truth in this case is in the lies. The truth, if you carefully consider the evidence in this case, the state believes you'll find the truth in this case is that the defendant killed Vicky, and that he's guilty of all 4 charged offenses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Sal.
Okay, so there you go. There we have the opening statements. How do we feel about this one, guys? Do we think this would be one that may be of interest to us? I mean, more to the point, did we find the prosecution's arguments persuasive? We wonder if he still has the girlfriend or if she moved on to the next evil old fart. Good question. Because there are a few others, to be honest, and some of them do seem quite interesting. Obviously, law and crime goes back a long way, but I can honestly say that there's probably. Look, I know that judge. Oh yes, he's very persuasive. Sounds pretty weak sauce, not gonna lie. Okay. Wonder if there's a. Here's what I picture a lawyer should be. Well, there you go. I do kind of just want to read this article too. Hang on. Because this is friggin' hilarious. Like, not the circumstances, but the title. Jurors subject dominatrix to potential 25-year prison term for trying to murder a lookalike eyelash stylist with cheesecake tainted with a powerful Russian benzo. I'm very annoyed that New York does not allow cameras, because that would have been an amazing trial to cover. Hey, Digger. There was nothing sweet about this cheesecake. A 47-year-old New York woman from Russia, described in various reports as a dominatrix, was found guilty in a Queens courtroom on Thursday of trying to poison and murder a fellow Russian woman who looked like her all the way back in August 2016. Prosecutors said that the jurors agreed that Victoria Nazarova, devised a Trojan horse-type plot appearing at the door of the then 35-year-old eyelash stylist and friend Olga which, with a container of cheesecake in hand. That cheesecake, prosecutors said, was actually tainted with a powerful Russian benzodiazepam, phenazepam. Queen's District Attorney Melinda Katz said in a statement that the verdict said after the verdict that Nazirova took the victim's passport and employment authorization card in a bid to steal her identity. Yeah, that's sort of why I was going back, seeing what ones had been, had actually been like stream trial to cover cover, basically. Jury saw through the deception and the schemes of the defendant. She laced a slice of cheesecake with the deadly drug so she could steal her unsuspecting victim's most valuable possession, her identity. Fortunately, her victim survived, and the poison led right back to the culprit. The defendant deserves to be held accountable for a crime with a long term of incarceration. Prosecutors said that the Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn resident attempted to murder the victim at her Forest Hills home on August 28, 2016, and tried to make it look like a suicide. According to the evidence, on August 28, Nazarova visited the Forest Hills home of the then 35-year-old victim bearing a gift cheesecake. At the time, the victim and Nazarova resembled one another. Both had dark black hair, the same skin complexion, and had similar physical traits. They both looked like a 50-year-old Russian woman. Murder becomes word salad. Triple X is very good, only audio issues. Taylor's going to attack prosecutors until she's 80, and I'm hoping we get to see the devising trial. Well, the devising trial will still go ahead. It's just they've rescheduled it. The attempted murderer identifies as a leftist, so they only get a handful of days in prison. Hmm. Additionally, both were Russian speakers, the press release said, sketching out the facts of the incident and its aftermath. The Queen's woman ate the dessert given to her by the defendant and afterwards began to feel sick and laid down. Before passing out, her last memory was of seeing the defendant walking around her room. The following day, the victim's friend discovered her unconscious in her bed. Later, it was discovered that the pills were scattered around the body as if the woman had attempted to kill herself. This is not a joke, it's not just a story, it's not an accident, and it's not a mistake, said the prosecutor. The defendant intended to kill the woman and steal her identity. We have ABC News.
Now with a bizarre murder plot here in New York. A Russian woman is charged with poisoning cheesecake, giving it to her look-alike so she could steal her identity. ABC's Lindsay Genesis here with the details. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, George. It sounds like the pages of a spy thriller, but authorities say this actually happened right here in New York City, and they've now charged this Russian woman with attempted murder. Her alleged victim telling us how she narrowly escaped death.
This glamorous Russian woman covered in fur and diamonds is behind bars this morning. Her alleged crime, attempted murder, and her alleged weapon, cheesecake. Prosecutors say that in 2016, 42-year-old Victoria Nasirova targeted 37-year-old Olga Civic, who looks strikingly similar to Nasirova, giving her cheesecake laced with a powerful tranquilizer.
She called me, "Oh, I'm gonna bring you like very delicious cheesecake." When I eat that cake, I feel right away very, very sick. I lose my vision.
Civic tells us her landlord discovered her unconscious in her bed, dressed in lingerie with pills scattered around her. Prosecutors claiming Nasirova wanted to make it look like a suicide and took Civic's passport, hoping to steal her identity. At the hospital, Civic says doctors told her she was 40 minutes from death. But today, she's made a full recovery. Nasirova had been on the run since 2014. Wanted by Interpol on a murder charge in Russia involving the death of another woman. She was tracked down last year and hauled in for grand larceny charges. Her alleged victims in the theft cases, all men. Prosecutors say she met them on dating websites while she allegedly used a variety of identities, something she told Chasing News.
Rachel, Mira, Sabina.
But authorities say it was Nasirova's love for selfies that landed her in jail. A private detective finding her from this selfie on Facebook.
I also noticed in the reflection of her glasses and in some of the photos provided clues to a specific location.
When asked if she regrets taking the photo that put her behind bars,
Нет.
This week, Nasirova pleaded not guilty on all pending charges here in New York, including that attempted murder charge. She faces up to 25 years in prison. She has publicly denied any involvement in that murder in Russia. The alleged victim in this cheesecake poisoning tells us she did eyelash extensions for Nasirova at a salon normally, and she was very surprised when this woman showed up at her house with cheesecake, but they were friendly, so she ate 2 pieces.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Should have said you first.
That would have been smart.
Oh, eat the cake, Annie Mae, eat the cake. Don't eat the cake. That's what they're saying. All right, thank you so much, Lindsay.
Oh, what's happening there? Okay. Oh, that's George Stephanopoulos. I'd never actually seen him before. All right, so I'll put on the defense opening statement, see whether or not the audio is any better. Dwayne's going on that it was the Russians. Russian disinformation. And then we'll keep digging and see what other cases there are. Just as a backup. And then after that, I might head back to bed because it's now 4 a.m. and it does not look like we're going to have any other trials to actually look at that are live.
Angela, you ready to go for the opening?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, next time, no one will find me. That was a statement that Victoria Prokopovich stated to her family the second time she tried to commit suicide. I'm going to state it again. Next time, no one will find me. I could sit up here and tell you that this was a perfect family. It wasn't. I could tell you that this family was full of love and happiness and there was always good times, but it wasn't. Was there good times? Absolutely. Every family has good times. Was there bad times? Absolutely.
Oh, good God. Sorry, I'm just reading through what Law and Crime consider their 10 best stream trials. Literally the words, you know it's a rough case when the defendant is already admitting to dismemberment of his 5-year-old daughter. Fuck that.
What the state has not told you is Victoria Prokopovich has suffered from mental health issues since a teenager. She's been seeing a counselor since 1971. She was 18 years old. And she struggled with her mental health since that time. Since that time, she had been diagnosed with multiple personalities, where she had several different individuals. She was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and there were suicide attempts. The state wants you to believe that my client murdered his wife because he wanted to get in a relationship with another woman. It's not true. The state wants you to believe that my client, at 68 years old, perfectly executed his wife's murder to the point that nobody can find her. You're not going to hear how it happened. You're not going to know when it happened. You're not going to have proof of a body. A 68-year-old man got rid of his wife, a grown woman, so perfectly that the house wasn't disturbed. My client opened up his house, opened up his life
I think so.
to let the police search.
Not unless you...
The state's right. They did searches.
Right, I think.
They searched with dogs multiple times. Even specialized dogs, cadaver dogs, looking for Victoria Prokopovich. They searched with drones, sonar, individuals, family members, highly trained, specialized officers who do this. This is their job, their living, and they're good at their job. I gotta believe they're good at their job. Because they wouldn't be doing their job if they weren't good at it. And yet we sit here today with no body and no evidence of how she disappeared. They say my client was the only one that saw her before she disappeared. It's not exactly true. You're going to find out that James and Victoria lived with Victoria's son, Wesley. Wesley was there the day she disappeared. Wesley doesn't know what happened to her. Jim doesn't know what happened to her. The only person that knows what's happened to Victoria is Victoria.
Yes, when I bring them up, if they're on
The
screen,
problem
they
with
show on both
mental health is you never know when it's going to come on. You can have a good day, and just like that, it can change to a bad day. This is a missing persons case. Still is a missing persons case. Over the next several weeks, you're going to hear testimony from all these
Or if
individuals that
that's,
went looking for
accidentally
Victoria.
or anything over.
They looked at quarries, they looked at sludge ponds, they looked at fields, they went down to the Mountain Bay Trail. They searched any and every lead they could get. If they heard it in a bar, they checked it out. Why? Because these guys are good at their job. They did not take a stone and not unturn it. If they heard it was up in a forest somewhere on mile marker 20, they went and looked. Why? Because she was missing. But they haven't found her. They want to get to the conclusion and then backfill how it works. Part of this is that Victoria's family doesn't like the way my client grieves. They don't like the fact that he didn't go on searches. Professionals were searching for her. Professionals with trained animals went looking for her. When they went on those searches, they went to the same places the professionals did.
I really hope the low-level felonies did not involve the donkeys.
That's why he said, you're not going to find her. If the professionals can't find her, how do you think you're going to? This is a missing persons case. The state has the burden of proof in this case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client killed his wife and he did it intentionally. You're going to hear about the night of the 25th into the 26th. You're going to hear that Jim got up like normal. He works at McKeefrey's, went to work that morning, went home to take his wife to a doctor's appointment. She went to see her psychiatrist that day. They drove home. He dropped her off, went back to work to check out his time card, went to Super Ron's, picked up some chicken at the deli, came home. Jim, Victoria, Wes, they all had dinner together. At some point, as the evening got on, Jim took his boots off, does what most truck drivers do, sat in his recliner and he fell asleep. That's the last time he saw Victoria, was when he went to sleep. At some point, Wes left the house, said he saw Jim laying on the couch or on the recliner, watching TV, possibly dozing off, and his mother was still in the kitchen. Then Wes was gone. And then when Jim woke up at 3 a.m., he went around the house looking for his wife.
How many of these
She wasn't
trials
there.
are so good
He hollered for her, hollered for Wes.
12 kids, and so I'm going to be
Went outside,
like,
searched the property, couldn't find her. When he couldn't find her on the property, he got in his truck and started searching the roads. When he came back, Wes was coming in. Now, Wes, you're going to hear that he gave several statements to the police, just like my client. And Wes's stories weren't exactly consistent as to his time frame. But neither Wes nor Jim know where Victoria is. Now, the state wants to say, well, Jim didn't call the police right away, neither did Wes. Jim didn't call the family right away, neither did Wes. Jim didn't go on the searches, neither did Wes. Because Wes and Jim live with Victoria on a daily basis. They dealt with her mental issues on a daily basis. You're going to hear that both Victoria's two daughters didn't see her since November of 2012. They didn't go visit her. It's easy for somebody to come in and disagree of how the way you grieve when you don't live with somebody with mental health on a daily basis. Jim and Wesley lived with Victoria on a daily basis. Victoria tried to commit suicide for sure twice. You're going to hear about a garage incident where she tried to gas herself, where her daughters found her. You're going to hear about a pill overdose in 2002, right around Thanksgiving time, where their son Wes found her. That's when she said, Next time, no one will find me. She was upset that they found her. You're also going to hear about another pill overdose in 2008. Now, that one, she said it wasn't a suicide attempt, but we're not 100% sure. You're also going to hear that she had cancer and that she struggled with it. It was getting better. It was colon cancer. She had a colostomy bag. It was reversed. But you're also going to find out that she wasn't as unable to move around as the state would have you to believe. In fact, she had the ability to go places. Wes lived with them. Wes had a car. Wes could take her anywhere she wanted to go. She could walk. She could move around. You would hear she used to putz around the yard, and she used to do it without her cane. Ladies and gentlemen, you're also going to hear about my client and that he met up with an old friend, Kathy Friday. Absolutely. But you're not going to have any evidence that he talked to her or dealt with her prior to Victoria missing. Why? He loved his wife. Still loves his wife. Everybody in this room wants to know where Victoria Prokopovich is, including Jim. He wants to know where his wife is. We wouldn't be standing here today if we knew where she was. You wouldn't be necessary because we would know. The fact of the matter is there is no body, there is no evidence. She is gone. State has to prove that she's dead. No, Jim says she's dead. They're going to say, well, he talked to people while he's in custody. Well, of course, he's in custody. That was in 2019. 6 years later. Somebody says, what happened to your wife? Well, she passed. She's dead. It's been 6 years. She hasn't come back.
And of course, I was
Easy statement to
muted.
make. It's also easy to interpret.
Well, this case is from like 2 years ago. I'm gonna sit and we'll have a chat about a
I
few
would
other
love
cases.
to tell you that this was the perfect family and everybody got along, but they didn't. But that's real life. This is real life. I can draw on, but I want you to look at the evidence as it comes in. I want you to take careful notes about timelines, time frames, and people's stories. I also want you to take careful note about how people turned on Jim because he wasn't grieving the way they wanted him to. You heard the state talk about how he wanted to get rid of her stuff. You're also going to hear that there was a telephone call in December of 2013, right around Christmas, where Jim told his stepdaughter, I just can't get rid of her stuff. And it shocked her. They want to make Jim sound like he is cold-hearted and did not love this woman, and that's not true.
40, 50, 60 years.
He loved this woman.
As shit, but he
He
still
cared for this woman. He took her to doctor's appointments. They say that he was controlling. If your wife had overdosed on pills multiple times, wouldn't you lock them up so she'd stay safe? I would.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a controlling husband. That sounds like a loving husband, trying to keep his wife alive. I leave you with this. Next time, no one will find me. Victoria's own words. Thank you.
So yeah, that was that. All right, so I want to go back to what Law and Crime call their most memorable cases, because I want to have a quick chat about some of these. Because I'm not going to lie, it's an interesting list, and it gives us somewhere to go for. Like I said, I'm going to be steering fucking clear of any of the ones involving kids, because some of those are absolutely just dark and depressing. So we also had the Scott Nelson trial in 2017. Complete stranger burglarized the victim's home, kidnapped her, killed her, and dumped her body in a woodland area. He admitted to it in court, and that was before they went to court. Doesn't take a genius to predict the verdict, but the actual sentence apparently was interesting. You're invested in that one now? Well, guys, like I said, this is only a backup one. It's so that I've got it in case shit hits the fan and anything happens to the Visine case or anything happens to the Zachariah Anderson case. Because, you know, I'd rather have some things in the background just in case. Kaiser reckons the defense attorney was more convincing. Okay. What was the other one? No, I'm not. I'm skipping over the kids. I don't want to see that or that. Now, this one I think might be a little bit interesting. Texas v. Amber Geiger. No dispute that Dallas cop Amber Geiger entered the unsecured door of neighbor Botham Shem Jean's apartment and fatally shot him. Nevertheless, her defense argued that it was a reasonable mistake under law. In this account, she parked on his floor after a long day at work, entered his apartment thinking it was hers, and believed that he was an intruder. Am I a monkey flinging my shit at fans? I don't know. Have any of you been hit by shit lately? Someone said Hayden's trial cursed because his trials settle. I really hope not. Anyway, but was it enough to convince the jurors that she should evade legal responsibility? Victim was just relaxing at home when she entered. The case touched on the ongoing national debate about how police treat people of color, especially black men, and whether cops are insulated from responsibility by virtue of their position. Geiger was white. The victim was black. It's fine, Ava. You gotta admit, though, that's 3 times in a fucking row. Fuki case. He pleads guilty. XXXTentacion. Mistrial. The fucking Visine case. Delayed for hearing. So. No, that's the other kid one. Kid one. Where is... Even prosecutors said murder victim Dee Dee Blanchard should have gone to prison. She forced her daughter Gypsy to feign a slew of serious illnesses and used this facade to cheat people out of donation money. But Gypsy wasn't sick. She was trapped at home in a prison. In her isolation, she made friends online with Nicholas Gojon. That became a long-distance relationship and progressed to the brutal murder of the mother Dee Dee. Perhaps Gypsy is a sympathetic figure, but even she pled guilty to second-degree murder in her mum's death. Prosecutors kept going after the other guy for first-degree murder. His defense argued that he simply wasn't able to commit the offense because he was incapable of deliberation. His IQ was just above the learning disability benchmark. Authorities argued, however, that he was capable of making his own decisions and that he participated in the plot just to make Gypsy his sex slave. Watched a lot about the Gypsy case? Okay. I blame Kanye West. He doesn't like that you sided with the burger joint, so he's trying to flex behind the scenes. Not Gypsy. They're both ugly people. Had too much of them. Okay. Alright. People watched a lot of the Gypsy case. Okay. This one caught my attention as well. Tex McIver. Tex McIver was a noted Atlanta, Georgia attorney. Wife Deanna McIver was a successful CEO. A car ride in Atlanta would change the story of the marriage forever. The defendant was in the back seat of the vehicle when he asked his wife to give him his gun because they were in an area that he considered unsafe. But the danger wasn't from the outside of the car. The defendant said that he was in and out of sleep, and when he woke up, the firearm went off. The defense said it was an accident and that they took advantage of the fact that the state's expert accidentally set off the unloaded gun. That's not really what you want from your firearms expert. Prosecution asserted that he didn't call 911, however. This was murder and the motive was money, according to the state. That one sounds interesting to me, if only because it's another attorney. But, I mean, how... Kanye's still hiding out in your spare room? Okay. Easy ways to get a sex slave. Craigslist uses code, but you can still find them. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed when Craigslist got rid of the, like, casual encounters and seeking connections. Sometimes those were hilarious. I'd actually be, if at the moment, I'd be reading through those to give content, because that was fucking hilarious. So much for being an expert. Yeah, the expert shut off the gun. Yeah. Thought Kanye fled to Argentina. I got no clue, to be perfectly honest. That's the pre-trial hearing. Now, that one's like 2 hours. I'm not going to do that right now. But yeah, so I'm thinking either the old guy, the attorney with the haunted gun, or the Amber Geiger case. Does anyone have any strong feelings one way or another? I mean, I'll probably just have them all in the background just in case. But I thought you were going to bed. Yeah, I think I will. Now that it's 4:30 and I know that hey, Apostle Steve, oi, oi, oi. Can't say it nice and loud because the wife and child are still asleep. But, yeah. Just do one quick check. Nothing else is popping up. Yeah, no. So Law and Crime just have the murder trial. And what TV? Not showing us anything else either. So, yeah. Old guy and a ghost gun. Sure, why not? Get some rest. Yeah, okay. Alright. What I might do is, like, I really need to go and take care of some things, but what I'll do is, after I end this, guys, I will put up a sort of post poll to see what, continue with the difficult name trial. Okay. So, some people do seem invested in the old guy case, so that's fine. But I mean, all of this is all on the basis that nothing happens with the Anderson trial tomorrow. So, but in the meantime, guys, thank you for sticking around and sticking through this. I believe we actually made it 2 hours without having a trial to watch. Yeah. Where are we? All right. I'm going to get out of here. Get a little bit more sleep, and I shall see you all shortly. I don't know whether or not I will do my usual law news and laughter now. I mean, I didn't have one prepped, and I'm literally about to hit the hay for probably 3 hours. So we'll see where we go. But either way, I shall see you shortly. Stay healthy, wealthy, wise, people, and I will. You love watching car accidents? Bite me, stingy. So, all right. See you guys.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks, don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then.
Oh, actually, I'll set it up for you guys. Sorry, not Joe. And that's going to be on. Creator content. Thank you to everyone that subscribed too. I've already hit 8,900, so we only need 98 left, 98 more, and I'm officially at 10k. Sorry, 9k. What am I saying? I wish it was 10k. All right, there you go. Everyone's got somewhere to go now. All right, see you guys. Love you all. Yes, I'm talking to you guys. All right, see you all later. Bye.